Hi, my name is Tonga. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and educator. And today, in this video, I wanted to go over how to dig deep into understanding how notes interact within a given scale in relationship to the harmony of a chord that you're playing over, with the intention to make informed decisions on what notes you want to actually utilize and go beyond the just like, oh yeah, chord tones are great, because I mean, yes, of course they are, but how the color tones and chord tones interact with each other and how it can shape new ideas by focusing on the details and how it sounds to you, so that when you go into improvising over what I'm going to cover today is a Phrygian scale, so something that's very unique in sound. You can find your own personal approach that will help you, number one, get through the change, the chord change, and improvise over it well, but also find your mark, essentially, and how you want to sound at the end of the day. So for today, I want to focus on a Phrygian minor scale or mode. And the reason why I wanted to focus on this one is yesterday I happened to be teaching a class where the class or ensemble was playing Kenny Barron's Lunacy, which really hangs out on a B Phrygian scale or mode. And it's got a very unique sound that's super fun to play over, but in order to draw everything out of it, I had the students, like, we went over this exercise of just like, okay, let's go through each note individually and see how it sounds and see what we can aim for to maximize figuring out what we would like to say in our own solos. So we're going to do that today. I'm going to go step by step how we're going to analyze each one. So let's start off with the chord I'm playing is essentially, it's a C major 7, well, with a sharp 11 over B. And this sound is really tense, but also beautiful and lush, and like there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of potential in it. And because of that, it almost requires you to take it very seriously to get the most out of it, because there's so many things to draw from it. So what I did, or what I like to do when I have an interesting harmony I'm really trying to decipher and figure out where I fit into this, is take it one note at a time. And so what we did was play the chord and we went through each individual note. So in order to do this, we just played the harmony and just kind of stuck on it and just individually played one note at a time within the motor scale. So what I'm going to do right now is I set up a groove, and I'm going to play starting at the root and then really discuss, or like really mull over, how did that sound and how that felt, and figure out that note's place within the greater scheme of the whole harmony and the lines that I want to play. So let's do that. So the first one I'm going to do is the root, which would be B. Now, what I'm really trying to do here is figure out what that feels like. To me, it's a very stable sound, and usually the root, for the most part, when you're playing over any chord change, the root tends to be the most boring sound, or it's the safest. And safe and boring kind of go hand in hand. But Another word I use for it is vanilla. It's pretty straightforward, and it doesn't add a lot, but depending on how you set it up, the root can be very interesting, but it does require some setup a lot of times. In this case, I don't know if you're hearing this, but for me, the root actually ends up being very, very interesting, which is odd within the fact that, like, oh, that's not usually the case. So that's something to note. It's interesting. It's something that I would, I'm going to check off and be like, oh, I like this sound in particular. It's something that's, going to work, but it feels interesting. It's not just a safe place. It's also interesting. And that's something to, like, when I'm forming a line or playing within the harmony, I know I can either launch from or land on. And it not being just a safe, a safe place to land, but something that has some musical value to what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to play the line. I'm going to play the line or some lines and end on the root. So this process has two parts. First part is just to play the note and let it sit within the harmony or the groove, just to hear the relationship within it sustained. So you get a true sense of it. You can't just play the note once and be like, oh, cool. Like, you want to hear it in all its glory and get a feel for it. And then the second part is to play around, play some lines, and then land on it or launch from it to see how effective it is in terms of arrival point. And what does it feel like in motion, in the context of motion. So what I just played sounded and felt good to me. It's something that is very dependable, but also interesting, not boring. So that's something that I'll mark down as, okay, within a Phrygian kind of groove harmony like this, the root is absolutely a game changer. Not a game changer, but it's game on. So let's move on to the next note, which would be a flat 2. All right, so the flat 2 had a lot of tension to it. What I look for is, all right, does it feel like something I can put, sure footing on, or is it something that I would like to, or it feels like it needs to move somewhere? In this case, I felt that it should drop into something. It should move. It works better as a neighbor tone or a passing tone. It's not something that I would necessarily land on, especially within the context of just this harmony. So that was step 1. Step 2, what I want to do next is check out that hypothesis of, like, okay, it shouldn't sit there. I need to move it to somewhere. So I'm going to pick the note below it and above it. So I'm going to go from the flat 2 into the 1, and then compare that with flat 2 up to the flat 3 of the mode, and see how that sounds and feels. So let's do that. Going up. And then also through. So I'm going to go from 1 to 3 and 3 to 1. So now I have even more information to really inform my decisions, in the sense of I'm going to use the flat 2 more as a neighbor tone. Oh, I should have done that on the recording as well. I'll have to do that for the next ones. But it doesn't feel right landing on it and really emphasizing it for too long. It's a very interesting color, but it does drop into either the root or up into the flat third pretty nicely. So that's significant information. Like, so when I play my lines, I can land on the flat 2 from like maybe an arpeggio or whatever, and then just make sure it drops either down or up into either or. Now, to take this even deeper, going from the flat 2, deciding which one is better or which one has more of a profound sound, or really identifying how does it feel going from the flat 2 into the 1 versus flat 2 into the flat 3. So now we're getting into even a deeper sense of understanding, rather than just, oh yeah, it's going to be passing tone or neighbor tone. But there's usually a spectrum of how things are going to work. So for example, when I drop into, what I noticed was when I dropped from the flat 2 to the root, that felt very satisfying. Whereas the flat 2 going up to the flat third definitely worked, but it just kind of laid in there. I'm going to describe it as plainly. It absolutely works. It's a whole step, so it makes sense. But that half step drop from flat 2 to the root, it voice led, obviously like much better because it was just a half step. And then the one being so strong and interesting that we found out before really shines. So taking that, like really looking at, okay, I have both of these decisions. I can drop to the 1 or the flat 3. It's now, okay, which one sounds better in what situation? Like, how does this fall on that spectrum, in the sense of the root is resolving to the root is going to have a very definitive, satisfying like end, whereas the flat 3 will sound good, but it won't have that same satisfaction. So now we're really focused on, or really noticing, the nuances of what's going on. All right. And then, of course, exploring, going, so the neighbor tones is one thing, but also passing tones. Like, this flat 2 works great as a passing tone in the sense of connecting us from the 1 into the flat 3 both ways. So we can go deeper and deeper into this. I don't want to go too far into it, but you can see how our understanding of the notes, these individual notes, and just the relationship within the harmony as well as the notes around them are really growing. And this is what I like to focus on, so I can get a good sense of how to really pull the most out of a particular harmony, especially a unique and deep sounding harmony as a Phrygian minor. So let's move on though to the flat third. Let's see how it sounds by itself within the context of just the groove, and then we'll figure out how it moves. Okay, so that's an interesting sound to me. I don't know about you, but usually the third sits really well because it's the most descriptive chord tone you have at your disposal. But that it sounded good, but also slightly unresolved within the harmony or just that groove. It didn't feel as like final, which is curious. Like I'm not too sure about it. That's something to note. It's something that I would land on, be like, yeah, that works. But it's still not like it doesn't have that finality or that comfort that, say, the root did in this, or the way the third usually sits in a lot of different harmonies. If you're on like just a major chord or a dominant chord or regular, just normal natural minor or Dorian minor. Now, the next thing is to find out how it sounds within the context of the notes above and below it. Go through as a passing tone. Let's do neighbor tones. Fascinating. It's interesting because that flat 3 has some stability to it, but when I was working through the passing tone and the neighbor tones, essentially, the 4, which is coming up next, the third dropped into the 4, at least to me, more solidly. The 3 has some unresolved feelings. That's totally curious to me. So let's do one more exercise, which I forgot to do. The last one is, let me just play lines and land on the flat 3 to see how it a greater context, kind of a bigger picture works, to see like how well we can land on it and see if it's sure footing for us. Also interesting, it didn't change my initial reaction while doing the neighbor tone and passing tone test. The third doesn't sit as well as, say, like the root would be, or any other third on any other harmony. Super fascinating. It feels like it wants to move probably up to the 4th. So I'm going to mark that. So the flat 2 can go down or resolves to the 1 nicely. The flat 3rd resolves really nicely to the 4th. Those are going to be my main notes so far on those. So let's move to the 4th. About you, but that felt pretty good. It felt stable, but not incredibly stable. Stable enough to be like, oh, okay, I can definitely land on this note just by itself. It fits in the harmony really, really well. And at the same time, colorful, which is great because it is the 4th or 11th, depending on how you you want to see it, but it really has a nice color and dependency, or you can depend on that note. So let's go into the next part, just playing the notes above and below. So I'm going to play the third and the fifth to see where that actually lines up. All right, that was neighbor tones. Now passing tone. So I think we found probably our most versatile note in the mode so far. This note sounds great as a landing point and as a neighbor tone between the third and the fourth, or it moves nicely from the fourth to the fifth back, and then also the third and back. And then it works really well as a passing tone. So that's super interesting. So let's do our last test, which would be so now let's do our last test, which would be just playing lines and be landing on it. So working through that actually gave me a different sensibility of what that sounds like to me, or how useful it is. I am now going to walk back it being a great place to land. It is, or I'm going to give it a little bit more nuance in the sense of landing on it doesn't give a feeling of finality or like a resolution. It actually is a great sound to essentially ask a question, or it's a good question mark to land on, because it feels complete in the sense of maybe the phrase, just like asking a question where the sentence is over, the statement is over, but you're expecting something to follow it afterward. So that's to me, that's a huge thing to really understand about the relationship of that note within the harmony. And as like someone who's trying to create phrases that have intrigue and just also set myself up for like my own internal dialogue within my solo, it's, oh, okay, the 4th or the 11th really has that question mark. So if I really want to set myself for an answer, for me to, make a statement or to make an extended line, I want to use the 4th as a point that I land on. So this is just a perfect place for me to emphasize. This is why it's so valuable to look at the harmony and listen to and really feel out what each one of these notes potential is, rather than just being like, oh, I know the notes that'll work on this harmony, let me just play through and aim for chord tones or whatnot. It's like, yes, that will work, obviously, but to really get a nuanced sound and to really express yourself fully, I would say that it's necessary to do this kind of work to really get to paint with all the colors, not of the wind, sorry, but of each mode. Each scale, each mode, each harmony is revealing something different about our emotions. And it will reward you if you take the time and nurture that to nurture that understanding. So whether you're just an improviser or especially a writer or composer, that'll really inform your choices and just the sounds and the feel. And you'll just develop a really, really tight and intimate relationship with the sound. So now, before I forget, I do want to emphasize that we're analyzing this intellectually and like breaking it down because that's what it takes. But we're also I like to talk about how it feels in the process, because that's, at the end of the day, it's about what feels good and what feels, all sorts of things. How does it make you feel? Because that's what you are actually trying to express. So connecting the notes with feeling and the harmonies and how they're related, that's the entire point. So this is what's going to inform your choices in the moment or when you're composing or whatnot. And you'll feel much more in tune and just more involved with your pieces or your improvisation by digging this deep. It takes time, but it's honestly, this is super fun for me. I hope it's super fun for you. And I hope you're not just listening to me play and, kind of pontificate on what I'm discovering or rediscovering. But I hope you also try this out yourself and make your own decisions on like, oh, this feels a certain way to me, because that's going to inform your playing and your sound ultimately. So let's move on to the fifth. We're almost done. We got the fifth, flat six, and flat seven. So okay, I think we found another winner in terms of just a safe but also interesting. I think all of these notes are interesting, but this is a very solid note to land on. This is sure footing. I would describe this as sure footing. But again, because the harmony is so interesting on its own, the fifth doesn't sound boring at all. It's got some color attached to it. So let's see it in action with the notes around it. Now let's do passing tones. Do it an octave lower. Okay, so that sounds good with its surrounding notes. The fifth is great. It goes into the fifth, like just the neighbor tones around it sound awesome, and it sounds really good. Honestly, the fourth kind of popped out to me when I went from the flat six, the five to the fourth. That really fell into the fourth really well. I don't know if you noticed that or felt that as well, but that's something that I want to keep in mind. But let me mark the fifth really quickly as kind of like a go-to. It's like the root and the fifth, go figure, are like the most stable sounds, but we've proven it. We earned that understanding, not just like, oh, it's chord tones. That's important. So now let me play through. So now let me play through the groove, but landing on the fifth or starting on the fifth phrase wise. All right, that proved the point even more. The fifth is great. It works great as a landing point, as a launching pad as well. So sure footing it is. The fifth is vetted officially. Let's move on to the flat six. Flat six is sounding like a contender, if not the winner of the most dissonant or unstable sound. It makes me feel uneasy to a certain extent. It just doesn't, it's not something that I would want to land on and emphasize unless I really, really wanted to produce an uneasy feeling in my audience. I have a feeling this is going to, because it's a half step away from the fifth, and we know how strong the fifth is, because we just vetted it. The fifth has a strong gravity. It's going to pull specifically that half step, that flat six to the fifth, down to it really well. I wonder how it's going to sound going up to the flat seven, though. Probably will work really well. But it's going to be more satisfying because it's going to voice lead, just like most half steps, better to the fifth. So let's check out the neighbor tones and the passing tones. Surprise for me, that flat six sounds fantastic going either way. I think flat six going to the fifth drops in just slightly nicer because of the fact that it's only a half step, but that flat six to the flat seven within this harmony is super satisfying too. Like really, really satisfying. I was honestly surprised about that. Yeah, this is why we do this, is because now it's like, all right, if I hit that flat six at the end of a line, it's going to drop obviously to the fifth, but that flat seven is definitely a really, really valid choice and something that should be explored. So let's do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to land on the six, the flat six, but I'm going to resolve it down to either the fifth and the flat seven and see what comes out of that. right, so works both ways, going either down to the fifth or the flat seven. Flat six is just a passing tone. I gotta mark that, but equally to the note above or below. Okay, now we're finally at our last note of the mode, the flat seven. Let's see how that sounds just by its lonesome. Flat seven sounds pretty good on its own, but I will say holding it for a while made me feel like I wanted to resolve up to the root. I know I didn't want to resolve to the flat six because we already went through that and we know that's not going to work very well for us. But it really gave me a pull, which is funny because it's a flat seven to the root. That's a whole step, but I felt a strong pull to resolve to the root. So let's try the neighbor tones and the passing tones through. I think the passing tone, I might go from, instead of the root to flat seven and then landing on the six, you might hear me play all the way down to the fifth because we know the sixth is so dissonant and unstable. So it sounds good coming from the flat six back into it as a neighbor tone, and then going back and forth between the one. But that the root definitely is pulling that flat seven to it. Yeah, it's a fascinating sound. It's stable, but also has a lot of qualities of something that wants to move. So let's play through it, expand upon it, and see how landing on the seventh is going to sound. Have it. The flat seven is something you can definitely land on. The flat seven has a lot of utility, it sounds like. So that's, again, something to mark. It can be something that we land on, or it resolves to the root, essentially. Okay, so at the end of the day, I marked down, I'll put this on the screen, for each of these notes, the check marks are going to be on the root, the fifth, and the flat seven. And the fourth, which is really interesting. Those checks are going to be notes that you can really land on. Those are the sure footing. That's how I arrived at it, essentially. You guys might have something different in mind, or you were feeling something different from the examples. And hopefully, again, you experiment on your own. But the root, the fourth, the fifth, and the flat seven. seem to be popping out the safest for me. And then the flat 2 resolving to the 1 is the strongest relationship it has in terms of like motion. The flat 3, surprisingly, sounds better going to the 4th. And then the flat 6 going either down to the 5th or up to the flat 7 really sounds great. And then the flat 7 is the only one, I would say, out of the notes that are sure footing that also resolves to the 1 or feels good going from the flat 7 into the 1 very strongly. So it's kind of a hybrid sound, or it has the most utility out of all the notes within this mode. Well, I hope you enjoyed this analysis. I hope it seems practical for you to explore on your own, or I mean, you can take my notes and run with them, and just really explore the sound and see where you fit into it. And this is a really interesting harmony. When I heard that Kenny Barron track, and I was working with my students on that particular harmony over the solo section, it really opened up a lot of discovery for the students and myself, because I honestly didn't really focus on Phrygian minor that closely before. But the sound definitely struck a chord within me. Another pun. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. It definitely has a certain sound that I've noticed before that I really do resonate with. And I'm definitely going to be writing with it soon with express purpose, because it's such a mixture of emotions, and you can really, there's a lot of potential there to explore and take advantage of. But now that I did this with students and for myself and with you guys, it really opens up how I'm going to approach it, and I'm going to feel way more comfortable whenever I do utilize this or happen to play a song on a gig that has this. I'm going to know I'm going to have more confidence in navigating this harmony and what I want to express in the context of the song. So this is how you dig deep. This is how I dig deep. And I honestly think if you did it too in this manner or something similar, you will get a lot out of it. Not just the intellectual understanding of what's going on, the choices that you can make, but also it gives you a certain intimacy within the sound and how it feels and how you feel with that sound, so that the music that you make is going to be much more intentional and free-flowing, because now you have that deep understanding on your own terms, and you can bring that to the table, whether it's on a gig or your own writing. So explore and follow your curiosity. Thanks again for joining me on this exploration. Subscribe for more, and share with your fellow musician compatriots. I want to hear from you in the comments how this is affecting the way you're perceiving soloing, but also your relationship to the notes available to you on different chords and different harmonies and scales or modes. So let me know in the comments below. But have a wonderful day and stay curious.